Scientists weren't supposed to find what they found beneath Antarctica's ice, and what makes it stranger is how quickly certain discoveries stopped making headlines, how fast some research teams went silent, how thoroughly specific findings disappeared from public discussion. Antarctica is 1.5 times the size of the United States. 99% of it sits buried under ice that, in some places, reaches depths of nearly 3 miles. Until the mid-2000s, we knew more about the surface of Mars than what lay beneath this frozen continent. That changed when technology finally allowed researchers to peer below, and what they uncovered wasn't just unexpected. Some of it was impossible to explain using our current understanding of Earth's history. The silence around certain Antarctic discoveries is what catches your attention first. Not the absence of information, but the sudden stops. Research that generates excitement, preliminary findings that suggest something remarkable, then nothing. Projects that vanish from funding records, data that gets classified under geological surveys without further explanation, scientific papers that cite security concerns or environmental protection as reasons for restricted access. When you start mapping these quiet zones, these gaps in public knowledge, a pattern emerges. The most fascinating discoveries are the ones we hear about least. In the 1990s, Russian scientists made contact with Lake Vostok, a body of water larger than Lake Ontario, sitting 2 miles beneath the ice. This lake has been sealed off from the surface for 15 million years, completely isolated. When they finally extracted water samples, they found life. Not just bacteria, but thousands of species. 94% bacteria, 6% complex organisms, and 2 archaea. But here's what made international news briefly before fading from discussion. They found a species of bacteria that doesn't match anything in known classifications. Its DNA showed less than 86% similarity to any catalogued life form on Earth. The team leader called it unidentified and unclassified life. That phrase appeared in a handful of scientific journals. Then the research went quiet. Further studies revealed something even stranger. Significant portions of the DNA sequences matched organisms that live around deep-sea hydrothermal vents, suggesting similar features exist at the bottom of Lake Vostok. Underwater volcanic activity beneath miles of ice in a lake that's been isolated since before modern humans existed. The implications are staggering, yet public updates stopped. The lake remains largely unexplored. Now consider what Soviet scientists discovered in 1958 while conducting gravity measurements. They detected massive anomalies indicating something beneath the ice that shouldn't exist. Mountains. Not hills or ridges, but a range stretching 1,200 kilometers, with peaks reaching 3,000 meters high. The Gamburtsev Mountains. These aren't young geological formations. They're estimated to be roughly 1 billion years old. Mountains that ancient should have eroded into nothing millennia ago. Geological processes don't preserve mountain ranges at that scale for that duration. Scientists theorize a frozen mantle might be protecting them, but that raises more questions than answers. What's keeping that mantle frozen? Why haven't normal erosion patterns applied? The mountains sit there, perfectly preserved, defying everything we understand about geological time. Research continues, but explanations remain theoretical at best. Then there's the mapping data that emerged from the British Antarctic Survey's BedMap 3 project. Using advanced radar and sonar technology, researchers created the most detailed subsurface map of Antarctica ever produced. What they found were 30,000 previously unknown hills buried beneath the ice. 30,000 terrain features, each rising at least 50 meters, that nobody knew existed. Before this mapping breakthrough, scientists openly admitted the Martian surface had been charted in greater detail than the ground beneath Antarctica. That's remarkable when you consider how much effort goes into space exploration versus exploring our own planet. The mapping revealed something else. Extensive flat surfaces buried beneath a 3,500-kilometre stretch along East Antarctica's coastline. These surfaces appear to be remnants of ancient river systems, formed roughly 80 million years ago when Antarctica and Australia separated, before ice covered the continent 34 million years ago. These ancient riverbeds now sit frozen beneath miles of ice, acting as barriers that regulate how fast glaciers flow toward the ocean. Without them, ice loss would accelerate dramatically. But the discovery that generated the most immediate scientific concern, then fell into relative silence, involves what's happening beneath the Dotson ice shelf. In 2022, researchers from the University of Gothenburg deployed an autonomous underwater vehicle called RAN beneath West Antarctica's ice sheet. The drone travelled over 1,000 kilometres through subglacial cavities, mapping terrain nobody had ever seen. What it recorded were teardrop-shaped formations indicating complex hydraulic activity influenced by the Coriolis effect. These structures suggest glacier melting processes far more intricate than current models predict. The formations point to interactions between water, ice, and ocean currents that challenge fundamental assumptions about how ice sheets behave. Yet detailed findings from this expedition remain largely confined to specialist journals. The broader implications, what these formations mean for ice stability, and sea level predictions haven't entered mainstream scientific discussion the way you'd expect. And this is just the beginning, because beneath Antarctica's ice lies evidence of volcanic activity on a scale that reshapes our understanding of the continent entirely. What researchers found when they started looking wasn't just surprising, it was almost incomprehensible. In 2017, researchers conducting radar surveys of the West Antarctic Rift System identified something extraordinary. Close to 140 subglacial volcanoes. 91 of them had never been documented before. Some rise more than 12,000 feet from the bedrock below, hidden completely beneath ice that's remained frozen for millions of years. This isn't a collection of dormant geological features. It's one of the largest volcanic provinces on Earth. And it's active. Mount Erebus, Antarctica's most famous volcano, sits on Ross Island with a lava lake that's been churning continuously since 1972. The volcano itself formed roughly 1.3 million years ago. What makes Erebus remarkable isn't just its persistence, but what it releases. During mild eruptions, the volcano emits gases containing microscopic gold crystals. Actual gold, crystallized in volcanic exhaust, scattered across the surrounding ice. Scientists still debate how the lava lake maintains its activity for decades without solidifying or erupting catastrophically. The thermal dynamics don't match typical volcanic behavior. But Erebus is just the visible piece. Beneath West Antarctica's ice sheet, that network of 140 volcanoes presents questions nobody's adequately answered. How many are actively generating heat right now? What effect does that geothermal activity have on ice stability? If even a fraction of those volcanoes experienced increased activity, the resulting melt could destabilize massive ice sheets in ways climate models don't account for. Research into this volcanic network remains limited. Accessing these sites requires drilling through kilometers of ice. Monitoring equipment must withstand extreme cold and crushing pressure. Most of what scientists know comes from radar imaging and gravity measurements, not direct observation. Then there's the crater. In Wilkesland, East Antarctica, researchers detected a gravity anomaly back in the late 1950s. Measurements showed an area of enhanced mass, a mascon, indicating something massive buried beneath the ice. Further analysis suggested an impact crater. Not just any crater, one measuring more than 450 kilometers across. That's twice the size of the Chicxulub crater in Mexico, the impact site many scientists link to the extinction event that wiped out the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. The Wilkesland anomaly dates back approximately 250 million years. That timing aligns disturbingly well with the Permian mass extinction, the most devastating extinction event in Earth's history. An event that eliminated roughly 90% of marine species and 70% of terrestrial vertebrate species. If Wilkesland is indeed an impact crater, and if that impact triggered the Permian extinction, then Antarctica holds physical evidence of the moment Earth's biosphere nearly collapsed entirely. Yet this crater remains largely unexamined. The ice above it is thousands of meters thick. Reaching the crater floor would require an excavation effort beyond current technological capability. So it sits there, a scar from an ancient catastrophe. buried and inaccessible. What researchers can access tells equally strange stories. In January 2025, an iceberg the size of Chicago broke away from the George VI ice shelf. The event wasn't particularly unusual. Antarctica sheds massive icebergs regularly. What made this significant was what happened next. Using the remotely operated vehicle Sebastian, scientists explored the seafloor beneath where the ice shelf had been. At depths reaching 1,300 meters, they found flourishing ecosystems: large corals, sponges, icefish, giant sea spiders, octopuses, all thriving in darkness and cold that should be inhospitable to complex life. The same expedition captured the first footage of a colossal squid in its natural environment. 600 meters deep near the South Sandwich Islands, cameras recorded an animal that rarely survives being brought to the surface. Colossal squid typically die from pressure changes before researchers can study them alive. This footage showed the creature moving naturally, hunting, existing in an environment humans can barely reach. It confirmed these animals aren't just theoretical deep-sea dwellers. They're active predators in Antarctic waters, living in ecosystems we've only started to document. But discovering new species is one thing. Finding evidence that Antarctica itself was radically different is another. In 2017, researchers unearthed fossilized remnants of ancient rainforests in West Antarctica. Not sparse vegetation, rainforests. The fossils indicated a climate with average annual temperatures between 53 and 55 degrees Fahrenheit. This wasn't millions of years ago in some unrecognizable prehistoric era. This was 90 million years ago, geologically recent. Antarctica had forests, rivers, complex ecosystems, all existing where now there's only ice and rock. Those ancient river systems left traces. The flat surfaces discovered by the BedMap 3 project weren't random geological formations. They were riverbeds carved 80 million years ago when Antarctica and Australia separated. Before ice covered the continent 34 million years ago, water flowed across these surfaces, shaping landscapes that now sit frozen beneath kilometers of ice. These ancient riverbeds currently act as barriers, regulating how fast modern glaciers flow toward the ocean. Without them, ice loss would accelerate dramatically. East Antarctica alone contains enough ice to raise global sea levels by 52 meters if it melted completely. Adding these newly discovered surfaces into predictive models changes projections about how the ice sheet might respond to warming. Yet those revised models haven't generated the attention you'd expect. The implications remain confined mostly to specialized research papers, and that pattern repeats. Major discoveries, limited discussion, then silence. Which brings us to what might be the most puzzling find of all. Lake Vostok sits 3.5 kilometers beneath the Antarctic ice. It's the largest subglacial lake on the continent, the third largest lake by volume on Earth. But size isn't what makes it extraordinary. This body of water has been sealed off from the surface for 15 million years. 15 million years of complete isolation. No light, no atmospheric exchange, temperatures just above freezing, pressures that would crush most life forms instantly. Russian scientists reached it in the 1990s. When they finally extracted water samples, they found bacteria. Not just any bacteria. Species with DNA less than 86%, similar to any known bacterial DNA. The research team called it unidentified and unclassified life, something that doesn't fit into existing taxonomic categories. Further analysis revealed thousands of species, 94% bacteria, 6% eukaryotes, 2 archaea. Many of these organisms match genetic profiles from species living around deep-sea hydrothermal vents, which creates an uncomfortable question. Why would organisms adapted to volcanic vent environments exist in a lake that's been frozen beneath kilometers of ice for 15 million years? The implication is obvious. There are hydrothermal vents at the bottom of Lake Vostok, active geological features generating heat and nutrients in an environment that shouldn't support them. Features that have sustained complex ecosystems in absolute darkness for longer than modern humans have existed as a species. Yet this discovery generated minimal public attention. A few research papers, brief mentions in scientific journals, then silence. No follow-up expeditions, no widespread investigation into what else might exist in Antarctica's other subglacial lakes. Just documentation and moving on. The same pattern appears with the Gamburtsev Mountains. Discovered in 1958 by Soviet geophysicists, these mountains stretch 1,200 kilometers and rise 3,000 meters, a third the height of Everest, buried completely beneath Antarctic ice. What troubles geologists is their age. Estimates suggest they're around 1 billion years old, mountains that old should have eroded away completely. Geological processes don't preserve mountain ranges for that length of time. Wind, water, temperature fluctuations, tectonic activity, all of it wears mountains down to plains given enough millennia. Yet the Gamburtsev Mountains remain structurally intact. The prevailing theory involves a frozen mantle protecting them from erosion. But that theory raises as many questions as it answers. How does a mantle freeze in a way that preserves surface features for 1 billion years? What conditions would create that kind of preservation? And why haven't we seen similar formations elsewhere on Earth? The mountains exist. The explanations remain incomplete. Then there's the volcanic network beneath West Antarctica. A 2017 survey of the West Antarctic Rift System identified close to 140 subglacial volcanoes. Some exceed 12,000 feet in elevation. 91 of them had never been documented before. This isn't a few scattered volcanic features, it's one of the largest volcanic provinces on the planet, sitting beneath ice that's supposed to be stable. Mount Erebus, Antarctica's most famous volcano, adds another layer of strangeness. It hosts a permanent lava lake, one of fewer than 10 on Earth. The lake has been continuously active since 1972. The volcano itself is approximately 1.3 million years old. What scientists can't explain is the longevity. How has this lava lake maintained activity for over 50 years? Why does it emit gases containing minute gold crystals during eruptions? These aren't rhetorical questions, they're gaps in understanding that persist despite decades of observation. Climate data from Allen Hills reveals something equally puzzling. Researchers extracted 6 million-year-old ice from this region, the oldest directly dated ice and air samples ever recovered. Analysis of oxygen isotopes shows this area cooled approximately 12 degrees Celsius over those 6 million years, 22 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the first direct measurement of Antarctic cooling over that timescale. But here's what makes it significant. 6 million years ago, geological evidence shows Earth was much warmer. Higher sea levels, different atmospheric composition, ecosystems that don't exist anymore. Yet the ice preserves a perfect record of that transition. Air bubbles trapped in ancient ice contain atmospheric samples from when the planet was fundamentally different. Samples that could answer questions about climate patterns, about how ice sheets form and collapse, about what triggers planetary cooling or warming cycles. Yet this data remains largely confined to specialized research. It hasn't generated the kind of investigation you'd expect from discovering a 6 million year climate record. The pattern holds. Major discovery, limited follow-up, minimal public discussion. Whether it's unclassified bacteria in subglacial lakes, billion-year-old mountains that shouldn't exist, vast volcanic networks beneath supposedly stable ice, or climate records spanning millions of years, the response stays consistent. Document, categorize, file away. Antarctica keeps revealing things that challenge fundamental assumptions about geology, biology, climate, and planetary history. The discoveries accumulate, the explanations remain incomplete. And beneath all of it, beneath the ice and the silence and the unanswered questions, the continent waits, holding evidence of what Earth was, what it became, and what might still be hidden in the darkness below. Every expedition uncovers something new. Every survey reveals features that weren't supposed to be there. And every time the reaction is the same. Acknowledge it exists, then move on. As if knowing what's beneath the ice is less important than maintaining what we think we already know about the frozen continent at the bottom of the world. Antarctica forces us to reconsider what we think we know about our planet's history. The subglacial lakes teeming with unclassified life, the perfectly preserved billion-year-old mountains, the hidden volcanic networks, the ancient impact craters, all of it sits beneath ice we've barely begun to explore. These aren't minor geological curiosities, they're fundamental challenges to accepted timelines and established scientific models. Yet the discoveries keep getting filed away, documented but not investigated, acknowledged but not explained. The technology exists to explore further, the questions demand answers, but the silence persists. What's waiting in the other subglacial lakes? What else is preserved beneath those ice sheets? What happened during those millions of years we're only now beginning to glimpse through ancient ice cores? Antarctica isn't just hiding its past, it's holding evidence that could rewrite Earth's entire story. And right now, that evidence remains frozen, inaccessible, and largely ignored. The real question isn't what's been discovered, it's what's still down there, waiting beneath the ice, that we're not looking for.